Hello, my amazing artist. Are you ready to create your own Cezanne inspired still life? Let's begin. First, you want to get some paper. If you have construction paper, choose a color for your fruit, for your background, and for your bowl. If you don't have construction paper, you can always use white paper and we can color it later. You're also going to need a pencil to draw your objects and then something to color with. I'm going to use a variety of things today. So let's get started. I'm going to start with my background. So I'm going to move all this paper away except the color that I chose for my background. And I'm going to turn it so that it is landscape or horizontal. Now I want to do some kind of table. So I'm going to make a line and I can use whatever I want to make this line, but I'm going to make a line that goes across. I don't want to do it quite in the center. I want to do it just a little bit below the center. So I'm going to go across my paper like this. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. So you don't need a ruler unless you really want one. Now, the next step is to make some designs to separate the wall from the table. And that's going to also give our artwork a little bit of texture. So I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to make some kind of pattern lines here. You can do anything you like. You can make lines, you can make flowers, you can make pictures, you can make a window, whatever you'd like to do. So I'm just going to make some sort of wavy lines that go down like this. And then I'm going to do some dashes or dots between them. But again, you can do whatever you like to create a pattern and texture on your wall. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to decorate your wall.
I am a banana. I am a banana. Banana llama whamma llama. I am a banana. I'm yellow and thin. I've got a thick skin.
Okay, now that your wall is done, I want you to think about your table space. That's going to be the area here. Now, there's a few things you can do for your table space. If you look at the example on my left, there is one where they took another piece of paper and cut out a strip and glued it down. So that's one thing that you can do. There's also other examples where they took other materials and they drew patterns on here. You could also do something like that. I'm going to do that way, but you are welcome to choose whichever way you'd like to decorate your table. So I'm just going to go in my crayon box and I'm going to get out something that's going to kind of stand out on my background. Maybe a nice bright color like a light orange or a cream. I'm going to see which one of these actually stands out the best. So whenever you want to test a color, you can always flip your paper over and just give it a little test to see which one you like the best. And then you can flip it back and you can use it. So I'm actually going to use this one because I feel that stands out the most. All right, so now I'm going to flip it over. And again, I'm going to add some lines to create a pattern, which is also going to give this some texture. And the one last thing that I want to do is I actually want to color some areas of this in to make it stand out. So I'm going to grab a few other colors and just color in a few places on my paper. And you can use anything again to do this with. I'm going to try to use light colors just so this will stand out against this dark background.
I hang in a bunch of. I'm gonna be your lunch. Wah, 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 wah. 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 Ah!
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop here because I feel like I have enough texture on my background. So I'm going to take this and set it aside. And I'm going to get out the color that I have chosen for my vase. So I have chosen yellow because I want it to stand out against that dark blue background. Now there is a button to my left that you can click on if you want to look at different vase shapes that you can trace or draw on your paper to create your vessel. Now, one little trick, you can always just draw your shape right on here. But one little trick that I like to do is I actually like to fold my paper in half like this, and then draw half of my vase and cut it out so that it is symmetrical or the same on both sides. So I'm going to take And you can do this with pencil if you don't feel comfortable doing with marker, but I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to fold it in half, and on the fold side, I'm going to draw a vase shape. So I'm going to start with the lip of the vase, then I'm going to do the bowl part. Then I'm going to come in and do a curve for the little stem, and then mine's going to have this big foot. This is the bottom of the vase. They call that the foot. Okay, now I'm going to cut mine out. And again, you can choose whatever shape you want. I'm just making mine a little bit more fancy of a shape, but it can be simple. And I'm going to keep this folded, and I'm going to cut this out. So now you can see when I open it up, I have the shape of my vessel. I am going to add color to the side that does not have the black marker. I don't want that to be shown. I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to start adding some highlights and shadows to make this look three-dimensional. So I want to choose one side to add white to, and one side to add a shadow to. And usually I don't like to use black for shadows. It's just too heavy, too dark. So I'm going to use a brown for my shadow. And then I'm going to get a color that's kind of in between just to add a little bit more tone to it. So this will be my sort of middle color. Okay. So on this side, I want this to look like a round vessel. So I'm just going to take some white, and I'm just going to make some lines that curve like this from the edge in, and I can go probably almost to that little line right there, and I'm just adding some highlights, and I'm going to go all the way down to the end of this curve, and then all the way to the edge like that. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight to this part here. So I'm going to make some more white going down here, just like that. And then I want to have a little bit on this curve. So one side has the white, like that. Okay. Now this, I'm going to make a rim or a lip of the vessel. So I am just on the very top here. I'm going to add some white to this very top, and this I'm going to have it go all the way across. So the light's going to be hitting the edge of my vase.
Fancy cars, you can't sell to me. I spend all of my money on celery. Guarantee, there's no stopping.
Now I'm going to move on to the mid-tone here, and I'm going to add some color to the edge here of this lip that I've created, like that. I'm going to add a little bit coming down here. And sort of mixing with this edge here. And I'm going to add a little bit here on the foot and on the sides.
When the plate I see contains a broccoli, like I told you before, I'm hardcore. All the food that I score goes in the vegetable drawer.
And now for my shadow. So I'm going to take my darkest color, which is my brown, and I'm going to put it along this edge, and then anywhere that would be sort of an underneath of my vessel. So I'm going to take my shadow color, go on this side, and then under here to show that this is kind of a curve. Right there, down this edge, and then down this side. And then just a little bit under this lip to show that this is three-dimensional and not a flat piece. There we go. So now my vessel is done. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to set it aside and I'm going to work on my fruit. So depending on what kind of fruit you have, you're going to need paper that would match that color of fruit. I'm going to just stick with apples and pears. So the red is going to be my apples and the green is going to be my pears. So I want to draw some apple shapes. And I want to have a few sizes. So I put 2 or 3 different sizes of apples or fruits, just so you have enough to fill your bowl. And we are going to cut these out and overlap them so they'll look more three-dimensional. So that looks good. And then on this one, I'm going to draw some pear shapes. And again, I'm going to do 2 or more in different sizes of pear shape, so I have enough to fill in to my vase. There we go. So we're going to do something similar to our vessel where we created shadows, but we're going to add a little bit more texture on these, because if you look at a real fruit, they have some nice textures to them. So what I want to do is I want to have a highlight color just like before. I want to have a shadow color, and you can use brown again, or you can use a complementary color to your color you have. So complementary to my green would be red. So I could use that to create a shadow. And then I can use some shades of green to make my sort of mid-tone areas. Now I'm going to show you just doing one like we did with a vase, and then I'm going to show you some ones with texture. So again, you would choose a side and you would add your highlight to it. So I'm going to color one side with my highlights like that. I'm going to add a mid-tone, so coming in with my green color. And then I like to do a couple of shades of green just to give a little bit more texture. And then on the far end, giving a shadow. So I can go in with my complementary color and sort of mix that in, or my brown. Again, I don't like to use black because it's just a little bit too heavy. And if you look at Cezanne's artwork, it's really not that dark. It's a lot lighter. So there's an example of one that has been shaded with my colors just using lines. Now, when we talk about texture, there's also a way you can add texture by rubbing. So you could go around the house and you could find something that has a raised surface. So this is just a coaster, and you can see how it has this sort of raised surface to it. So I can actually take that and I can put it underneath my paper, and then I can add my highlights and shadows while I rub, and it's going to get a different looking texture. So you can see if I rub with the crayon, see how it creates those lines there? So that's going to make it look different. It's going to have a little bit different of a texture. And you can go around your house and find different objects that you can use, that you can rub on your paper to give each one of your fruits just a little bit more interest and a little bit more texture. Walls work really good if you have raised floors. Fabric, sometimes fabric makes a really cool texture, especially if you have something with lace on it. So just kind of experiment and go around your house and find things that you can rub to create texture while you're adding your shadows. Okay, so you just want to make sure that you have your highlight with your whites, your sort of mid-tone, which is usually a similar color to the color you already have on your paper, and then a darker color like brown or your complementary color for your shadow. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and do that with all of your fruit. Make your highlight, your mid-tone, and your shadow. Add those textures to make it look like it has visual texture. We want it to look like it has visual texture, like I could touch this and it's going to feel different than just smooth paper. All right, so go ahead and finish your picture.
But the party don't start till I show up with my carrots. Call Dr. Phil and want okra. I'm gonna eat up all of the okra. I'm
All right, it's time to assemble our collages and then add any details we need to once everything's assembled. So I'm going to start with my background. I'm going to add my vase, just like that. I'm going to check to see if I need to trim anything, make anything different. And I think I actually want to trim a little bit of the foot of my vase so that this doesn't stick up too high, and a little bit of the top. So you can do that now.
You shout, let me hear you shout. I'm gonna get crazy on a Brussels sprout. We're gonna get...
All right, and then just make sure, flip it over and glue the backside. If you're using regular Elmer's glue, try not to squeeze too much out, especially when you're adding your fruits, because it may get everywhere. So I'm gonna glue this in the center. I'm gonna press down on the bottom, but I'm not gonna press too hard on the top because I wanna be able to tuck fruit inside there. So I'm just going to sort of tuck this in and see what it looks like and decide how I want my fruit. And I actually like it when it kind of hangs over the edge. So I'm going to add some hanging over the edge like this. I can even add a piece or two sort of sitting on the table like that. So once you kind of like your arrangement, then you can go ahead and glue the rest of it down.
Crazy on a Brussels sprout. We're gonna get crazy on a Brussels sprout. Yeah! You gotta rock that cabbage.
All right, final step. Look over your picture, see if there's any place that you want to add any further details. Maybe you want to add some stems to some of these. Maybe you want to add a little bit more of a highlight on your vase. And I'm actually going to go back and add a little more highlight because I cut off the top of my vase to make it so you can see the fruit more. Maybe you want to add a little bit of a shadow where your fruit is sitting on the table here. So I'm going to go in, and on the right hand side, that's where all my shadows are, I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow to kind of show that this is sitting on the table. So just go in and decide if there's any place that you want to add any shadows. And again, like I said, you can add stems or leaves. So I can take a piece of that scrap paper that I have. I can cut out a leaf shape, and I can tuck those in to my picture just like that. Now I don't want to leave them plain like that because it's not going to look like it fits in with the rest of it. So I'd actually want to go in and I'd want to add some veins or texture to my leaf. I can even do the same thing where I add a little highlight on one side and make that look like a little leaf. Don't forget, when you're all done, the very, very, very last step is to go in and sign your name. Now you have to be a little bit conscious of your picture because some areas may be too dark to see your name. So pick an area where you're going to see your name the best, and then you can sign your piece. And that's it. There is my visually textured still life. I hope you enjoyed this project. I can't wait to see everyone's still lifes.